So not only is the government giving our resources away for free, they're gift wrapping it in taxpayer money. Recently, the Prime Minister of Australia fronted up to a bunch of mining executives, and he promised them that under his government, there won't be any more mining taxes, a carbon tax, or changes to the fuel tax credits. So let's go through each of these and spell out exactly why this is turning into quite the problem. First, the Prime Minister promised that there won't be a mining tax. Now, Australian resources are sold on our behalf collectively by multinational companies. Now, those resources are finite. They're once in a lifetime. And as the Australian public, we benefit from the wealth that brings back in. Imagine you have your family home, you trust a real estate agent to go and get you the best price possible. But instead, they flip it to a mate at a bargain price. Well, that's what's happened with a lot of our resources, particularly our gas and coal. We trust the government to go and sell it to multinationals and get the best price for it. And that comes in the form of taxation. But most of these multinationals pay little if no tax. Recent Australia Institute research found that 2/3 of the gas, the natural gas in WA, we basically give away for free. And let's be clear here about the mining tax. The mining tax is in regards to a super profits tax. That means that things are highly profitable at a particular stage in time, that you haven't done anything to make them more profitable. It just so happens that those things are trading at a really high price. So for example, right now oil is trading at a really high price, not because anyone's done anything in particular, it's because there's a war on, people are trying not to buy Russian oil. So you end up getting windfall gains, super profits. Now, in the past, a mining tax was proposed to capture those super profits and bring them back into the Australian coffers. But the mining industry pushed back. They spent $22 million in advertising against a mining tax. And in return, they saved themselves $160 billion. That was like a 730,000 times return on investment. That's money that would have gone into the Australian coffers to pay for hospitals, schools, roads and public transport, the NDIS, everything that we need for our way of life. The second point is the Prime Minister said there'll never be a carbon tax under his government. Well, firstly, there never was a carbon tax. There was a carbon price. They're different things. And when Australia did have a carbon price, which operated for 2 years, well, it worked. Emissions went down 2%, the economy grew 5%. What happened when this current coalition government scrapped the carbon price? Well, emissions went up, and they went up for a number of years. Now, you can reduce emissions without a carbon price or without a carbon tax. And this government has tried to through what it calls direct action, paying for emissions reductions, which it does through an emissions reduction fund. But this emissions reduction fund hasn't actually managed to lower emissions or certainly tick off on its box. And many of the carbon credits that this emission reduction fund bought lack integrity. That's to say that 70 to 80% of the carbon credits might not even be real emissions reductions or additional. That is, they paid for emissions reductions that would have happened anyway. Given everything that's happened since Australia scrapped the carbon price, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep this policy in your back pocket, or certainly not rule it out straight away. We've just had unprecedented floods, and they followed unprecedented bushfires. Climate change is here, it's happening now, and it's pressing. And we need to do everything we can to lower emissions. A carbon price is accepted, in fact is promoted, as one of the most effective ways of reducing emissions. And we know it works because it worked right here in Australia. So maybe it would be better, rather than ruling out these policies, is to keep them in our back pockets, because we'll need to be doing everything we can to reduce our emissions as soon as possible. And finally, the Prime Minister promised these mining executives that he wouldn't touch the fuel tax credit scheme. Now, what's that? That's basically taxpayer subsidy for diesel use. And a good chunk of that goes to the mining industry. And it's massive. According to Australian Institute research, it's about $8 billion worth. That's more than the Australian government spent on the Australian Army. Now that subsidy goes to coal mining trucks so that they can make more coal. So really, it indirectly makes it easier and cheaper to dig up and sell coal, which is the largest single source of greenhouse gas emissions and therefore the largest single source of climate change. So not only is the government giving our resources away for free, they're gift wrapping it in taxpayer money. The government has a lot of different ways that it subsidizes the fossil fuel industry. So directly through this fuel tax credit scheme, so subsidizing diesel use by mining companies, or by giving them money directly through grants for extraction and exploration, or giving them a break on some of the royalties that they owe as well. In total, there are $11.6 billion worth of fossil fuel subsidies in both the Commonwealth and state governments. And in the most recent federal budget, there are about $3 to $4 billion worth of new subsidies wrapped up in regional grants and in other ways. Instead of promising to leave fossil fuel subsidies, to keep subsidizing diesel use, to keep subsidizing fossil fuel mining, we should be promising to remove those fossil fuel subsidies. Instead of giving our resources away for free, we should be trying to tax them as much as possible. Make them pay their fair share, much like you and I do. Instead of allowing them to pollute for free, we make them pay to pollute, or we regulate them so they cut down their pollution in line with net zero by 2050. Wouldn't that make more sense as a country, rather than continuing on the same path of allowing multinational fossil fuel companies to continue to dig up and flip our finite resources and pay us very little in return, apart from giving us a dangerous climate? Thanks everyone for watching. If you want to learn more, please sign up to our email list, subscribe to our channel, and check out the Australia Institute website.